Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Nelson City Council's Governance Committee meeting. And I will open the meeting by calling for any apologies. Of course, I've just checked and everybody's here, so there's obviously no apologies. So item 2 on the agenda is confirmation of order of business. It's a good opportunity to remind everyone, including those in the gallery, that today, and in fact at all council meetings, we live stream the proceedings onto the computerized systems that everybody has through YouTube and so forth. So that is taking place right now. Other than that, in terms of order of business, there is a late item which has been circulated. The late item is entitled Insurance Renewal 2016-17 Infrastructural Assets Referral to Council. Has everyone got their copy of that item? Thank you. I now would ask members to indicate if they have any interests in any of the items on the agenda or any need to change the interest register. None?
If I may, Mr. Chair, the Bishop's Suitor Trust appears on the agenda today, and I'd just like to advise the committee that traditionally I've disclosed an interest in that by virtue of my relationship with Crowhorth, being an employee there, and they audited the Bishop Suitor Trust. I haven't worked with Crowhorth for 10 months now, and it's unlikely that I'll be returning there, so I will stay for that item if the committee pleases.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. You discussed this with me yesterday, and I concur with your view. I believe that enough time has passed to have no possible concern about your past involvement. There is, however, one other matter relating to interests, and that is that there is a public forum today, and the chair of the Tahuna Beach Holiday Park is here in the public forum, and as I am an elected member of the Tahuna Beach Holiday Park Board, I will sit aside from the chair, and the Deputy Chair, Councillor Ackland, will take the chair at that time. But before we do that, we have to resolve that we will accept this late item today. So the item needs to be moved that we will accept this late item in the business today. Would someone care to move it? Move Councillor Lunan, seconded by Councillor McGurk. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you. Mr. Marshall, can we welcome you as Chairman of the Tahuna Beach Holiday Park Board to the table, and I will vacate the chair, and the chair will be occupied by Councillor Ackland.
I can feel the power, Mr. Marshall. How are you?
Good morning.
Welcome along. And you know you... Please, thank you. And you know you've got 10 minutes as an organisation, so when you're ready.
Thank you. Yes. I come this morning to bring you some good news. It's a change, isn't it? Normally public forum brings you bad news, but I bring you some good news. Tahuna Beach Holiday Park is doing very well at present. We are over our problems, with major problems we have with the Canterbury earthquake and the loss of custom from that end. We have had a very successful summer. It's been good weather, as you all know. People have been travelling around, things have been happening, which is great. During March, we had just under 14,000 guest nights, which is pretty good. It's a lot of people coming into the area. It's a lot of money being spent, and I would anticipate for the year that probably somewhere over 20 million would have been injected into the regional economy from the people who've stayed at the holiday park this last year, particularly with a very good summer. We currently have extra income coming in for us from the Tongans and Niueans that come here each year. The Niueans have traditionally been involved, in Tongans and Samoans, in the fruit picking, fruit packing ends of work. Currently have around 40 in the camp, filling in some of the cabin accommodation, which is a little bit blank this time of the year. But as of Tuesday night, we had our board meeting at the camp, and had to turn around and use the staff room for our meeting because everything that could possibly be let was let. It was a total full night, and we become third-class citizens on that occasion because the money's more important. So we're doing our best to get it. I'd just like to say thank you very much for the money that you loaned us to do the heat pumps in place of the coal burners. Coal burners were ousted a couple of years ago. The heat pumps have been very, very successful. We've had around 7,000 litres of hot water coming out, which is equivalent to about 40 standard domestic hot water cylinders operating at any one time. It's a lot of water going through for a lot of people at a very, very economical price, less than the cost of operating on coal, which is quite interesting. So on that note, yes, it's all good news, and I'd like to again show appreciation for the loan. I've got a cheque here for you for $50,000 to repay part of that loan. So I'd like to hand that to the Mayor if I may. Thank you.
I'll ensure the Mayor gives it to the Chief Executive. Thank you.
Oh no, she likes to have the gold pass through her hands for a while. Thank you all. Any questions, by the way? If you do, I'll answer anything. Perhaps Matt?
Any questions, Mr.
Yeah. John?
Yes, if I may, thank you very much, Mr. Marshall. Appreciated the update on how it's gone for the season. I suppose one of the things that rattles around in my head are all these freedom campers that are around the place, and just wondered if the holiday park had some sort of strategy running to capture them and bring them into the park as opposed to allowing them to stay in other places.
Generally speaking, we will take anybody who is prepared to act responsibly, and we assess them when they arrive. Very few are turned away, very few, but I can tell you that on Tuesday night following our board meeting, some young people arrived, 2 carloads of them. I particularly noted when I went outside that they were booking in at the office after 9, 9:30 I think, which was later than normal. Particularly noticed a person in a red and white jumpsuit in the front of the car with a hoodie over top, and it looked a bit unusual. I had a good look and I found in actual fact it was quite a large dog that they were busy trying to get into the camp. We don't allow dogs. So they were trying to get the dogs in this red and white jumpsuit with a hoodie over top of it, and it was sitting up in the front seat. Yeah, we get some strange things. We sorted out that problem, and I'll give you this example because it's quite interesting. We sorted out that problem. We arranged for the person with the dog to go away. They stayed in the car park for some time, but eventually went. The other couple that we did allow in, we had to evict them yesterday because the smell of marijuana coming from the unit was strong enough to be smelt for quite some distance, and arrived there to find that they actually had a pit bull terrier dog in the building with them. Whether it was the one that was wearing a hoodie the other night, I don't know. But yeah, we have some problems, we deal with them. And when they get too tough, of course, the police are of great assistance to us. But generally speaking, it goes pretty well, but there are the exceptions. So what you see on TV is not necessarily what you get, I can assure you. Thank you, John.
Councillor McGurk.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Sid, thanks for Cash.
Good.
I noticed that the TDC, and in particular the Kaiteriri Beach Holiday Park, is turning away wicked campers. Has that been a topic of conversation within your management?
Yeah. We, as I say, we assess who arrives, and it's something we'll have to put a bit more time into to decide what is acceptable or not acceptable. We've got a fair bit of legality to consider there. I notice Z service stations are discussing whether they should or shouldn't fuel up their vehicles if they've got inappropriate slogans on them. That I think will raise some major issues too. Yep, we do our very best to monitor who we get.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No. Thanks very much, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you
Thanks for
again.
your time.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall, and thank you, Deputy Chair Luke. I did neglect to welcome Karis and Taylor. Karis Collins and Taylor Shuker, our youth councillors here today, for your experience of democracy, and it's lovely to see you, and you're welcome to have a comment during this meeting if you feel you would like to at any stage. Right, we will move on to item 5 of the business, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March. They are on pages 10 to 17. They've been circulated. Would someone be prepared and able to move that they be approved as a true and correct record? It's been moved by Mr. Murray, been seconded by Councillor Fulton. There is no discussion. I'll put it all in favour. Please say aye. Against, no. Carried. Item number 6 is the Status Report Governance Committee. There is no status report. Any comment, Ms. McDonald, anything that's arisen since the agenda was done? No, nothing, thank you. Item 7, Chairperson's Report. I'm just going to take this opportunity to say and remind all councillors that this weekend is the Anzac weekend. There are services on Anzac Day. In fact, there's a service on Sunday, the civic service at the cathedral. As of yesterday, only 2 councillors had indicated that they were going to go to the church service, as we've all been invited by the cathedral. I'd hope that we might get a bit of a better turnout than 2. There'll be 2 whole pews there for councillors and their spouses, so that's on Sunday. On Anzac Day itself, at 6 a.m. is the dawn service at Anzac Park. That's followed at 8:30 by a very small service which people don't often know, or not many people have known about. And it's been going on for years at the Queen's Gardens at the Boer War Memorial. There is a very short ceremony takes place there at 8:30 every Anzac Day, and that will be again taking place next Monday. That'll be followed at 9 a.m. by the Cathedral Civic Service at the church steps, and that's not normally held at the church steps. It's normally held at the World War I Memorial on the northeastern corner of Cathedral Square. It's now this year going to be held at church steps because that is where the first actual Anzac ceremony took place 100 years ago in 1916. And again, we hope that there'll be a good attendance of councillors there and others. And we do have involvement of our youth councillors at that. They're going to be reading messages that are 100 years old. There's a message in reply to the King's message. The first message is from the Governor of New Zealand at the time, and the second message they're going to read is from the Premier of New Zealand at that time. And they're also going to lay their wreath. So it's nice to see the Youth Council getting involved in things like that. That ceremony is going to be followed by the final one on Anzac Day, which is at Stoke, in the Stoke Memorial Hall, and that is at 11 a.m. So those are the functions that are happening this weekend, and I think it's appropriate from my chair's report part of this agenda to just remind everyone, and officially as chair of this committee, invite all councillors to those ceremonies. Thank you. And I'll move that oral report be received. Seconded by the Deputy Chair. All in favour, please say aye. Against, no. Carried. Next item on our agenda is item number 8, Sister Cities Update, and I'd like to invite our Sister Cities Coordinator, ex-Councillor Gail Collingwood, to the table. The papers are on pages 18 to 22. Gail.
Thank you very
welcome.
much, Ian. I'd just like to make a comment about the colours. It's wonderful to see the colours back here in Nelson and on display, public display. Again, I hope that the public know that they're there, because the amount of work, the handwork in that right-hand one is extraordinary. It really is a work of art. Maybe they need to go to the suitor. Sorry, that was just an off-the-cuff comment.
Yeah. Well, seeing as you've raised it, I think it does deserve a comment or a reply. They are there because of the Charter Parade 2 weeks ago. They have been shared over the years by the councils that are involved in the geographic area of the regiment. So that's Nelson, Marlborough, Canterbury, West Coast. And historically they've shared a year in each place and there's been a charter parade, in other words, every 4 years, to bring them back and put them up there. Over the last decade, that practice has fallen into disrepair, you might say, and we did move hard at this time of WW100 to get them back in here this year. Sadly, they're only going to be here for about 2 months.
Oh, that's very sad.
The Army want them back. So, but we'll work on them. We'll work on them because I think the old practice was a good one. It would be nice to see it happen. Whilst they're in our care, we have to take very good care of them because they are priceless and be almost impossible to replace. So they are very, very important pieces of history and memorabilia. So carry on.
Thank you. I'll take my report as having been read and just cover over one or two things. I told you last time about Miyazu Association, who are taking their choir, and they have a very full choir, as you will have read by the number of people who have registered to go, and are performing in 3 or 4 cities, which is really quite a coup for the choir from Nelson. So I hope there'll be publicity about that, because I really think that it is a supreme effort, the organisation of that. I just want to acknowledge my second expectation, the Economic Development Agency and the Yang relationship. I just want to acknowledge the work put in by the Chief Executive of the EDA, Bill Findlater, who is sitting here, because he has done an excellent, carried out an excellent role communicating with Yang Jiang since that relationship was established. And I understand that the arrangements for the next visit I have written in this report is April, but I understand from Bill yesterday that that's very fluid and it probably is going to be May. But next week he's going to have a business group coming from Wangshire, so you know, he never knows when people are going to turn up from these sister cities of ours in China. The budgets have all been put in. The sister city groups are very keen to get their budgets in for the annual plan allocations, and the meeting schedules have been set. My appointment terminates along with yours in October, and I have to report once again, which is dated for September, and I need to negotiate another reporting time with the admin people, because the last government's meeting is the 25th of August, and while that would be appropriate, I'm going to be in Fiji on that date, so I'm not going to report from there, unless you want to do a Skype thing. I suppose we could do that if you were really desperate, but so I need to negotiate some reporting times there. I want to acknowledge the loss of support and advice that came from the Kahatu while he was employed at the council. It was really invaluable for the sister city organisations when visitors were coming in and when people were leaving New Zealand. And I understand that there is a replacement contact person so that that advice is continuing. But it's extremely valuable for the sister cities, and I want to reinforce that. Now next week, Sister Cities New Zealand is holding its conference here. You are organising this conference, and I know some of our youth councillors are going to be there, which is a real coup to have you there on our Youth Day. So thank you very much for being willing to share your experiences and your time with people from all around New Zealand and our international guests who will be here too. The targets have been met for the conference with 120 registrations. Some of those are full-time and some are for part days. There's 46 people registered for the mayoral workshop, so Nelson certainly has attracted other mayors and council officers from around New Zealand for that mayoral workshop. So, you know, Nelson's a great place to be having a conference. 92 people will be attending the dinner out at Saxton's Pavilion. And so for the Rutherford Hotel, that means 145 guest nights. Now this conference can't compete with Tahuna Holiday Park, but for 2 or 3 nights, that's a pretty fair income for people from out of town staying at the Rutherford. And so you can see that these conferences really do generate some income and to the economy. There'll be representatives from various embassies, from Japan, from the Chinese embassy and the Chinese and the consul from Christchurch, and also USA. A very special guest will be, and I have written in my report, Nancy Kane, who's the president of Sister Cities International. She isn't available to come now. Maybe it's something to do with the elections, because I know that she has been candidate in elections in America in the past. So Nancy Huppert is coming, who is a global envoy. She's been involved with Sister Cities International since 1987 and has represented Sister Cities International in 128 countries and 42 states of America. She served as a vice president of Sister Cities International and has been the president of Sister Cities International. So a very capable woman who is coming, and Councillor Noonan has been given the wonderful opportunity of taking her around on a little sightseeing tour on Thursday, and she will get an email from me today giving her some guidance about what she might like to do, but the choice is hers. So thank you very much for agreeing to host Nancy Huppert. I'm sure she'll be an interesting person. She's very involved with the American Association of University Women and a coordinator of Women Helping Girls programs, so kind of right up my street as a person to come here to Nelson. So that is my report. There are 2 lovely leaflets now available, which I'll send around. I couldn't take any more because they had only had a few printed for the conference, when the guests will be taken to visit our 2 beautiful gardens, the Chinese and the Miyazu one. And I think that Nelson has every right to be proud of those 2 gardens, and I'm sure that the picnic at Miyazu will be well appreciated as well. Pass those around. So that is my report. It's not particularly active in the tasks and expectations, but there always seems to be something happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Questions?
Thank you very much, Coordinator Collingwood. And are there any questions? No questions. The recommendation is that the report be received. It's been moved. Is it seconded? It's been seconded by Councillor Fulton. I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you very much, Gail. Item number 9 is the Bishop Suter Trust draft statement of intent. And Mr. Ward is going to present the report to us today. And we have in attendance from the Suter, Gabrielle Hervey, board member, Judy Catchpole, director, and Ian McLennan, another board member. So if we've got enough seats for 4 of you, we'll kick off with Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All Nelson City Council CCOs have a requirement under the Act to provide a draft statement of intent. The Bishop Suter Trust Board has provided that within the statutory deadline. The opportunity now is for the committee to consider that draft statement of intent, request any, make any comments back to the board, or to accept it as the final for the 2016-17 year. Separate to the statement of intent, the Trust have asked the committee to consider the issue of entry fees. This was a matter for the letter of expectation. The Trust have come back and requested additional funding to allow for free entry. The staff recommendation is that the free entry be aligned with current practice at both the museum and Founders Heritage Park, which is free entry for locals, and that visitors to the region would continue to pay an entry fee. But I'll let the board members and Julie talk to both the six-monthly report and the draft statement of intent, if there are any questions on that.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Questions of Councillor Ward? Mr. Ward, sorry. Everyone's read the report, quite clear on the content, quite clear on the item which Mr. Ward mentioned, which is that the suitor has requested full free entry by way of a grant of 20,000. The staff are recommending free entry for locals by way of a grant of 10,000. Mr. Rainey, Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ward, in regards to this matter, on page 71, there's a letter, of our agenda, there's a letter from the Chairman of the Bishop Suitor Trust outlining the request for an ongoing increase of 20,000 to the base operational grant. Can you just please clarify for me the recommendation of 10,000? Is that just a rough sweep that 50% of roughly the 50%? And the second part of the question, if I may, is I'm presuming by local you mean Nelson ratepayers. Is that the intention? If you could give some clarification about that.
So through the chair, the trust are somewhat entering into the unknown. They've got a new building. There is going to be a lot of excitement and a lot of we would expect a lot of visitors. They've got a big job on their hand to get visitors through the door. The 10,000 figure is conveniently 50% of the 20,000 that was requested, and really that reflects the fact that we are crystal ball gazing to an extent. But if I think about what happens at both the museum and at Founders, is that locals will generally go multiple times where it's free. If there is a charge, it is seen as a barrier to them going regularly throughout the year. So I think it is worthwhile supporting the trust to enable those visitors to come through. Both Founders and the museum treat locals as people living within the broader Nelson region, which would include Tasman also.
A subsequent question then through the chair. So I'm presuming that is the policy that you suggested would continue or would apply in this instance?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I have a question about how you identify if someone's local, particularly with high school students. I think this is a really great initiative, and I would really hope that high school students would be going to the gallery maybe after school, but they might not have ID. So currently, what do people just say they're local? What happens?
So through the chair, and bearing in mind that at the moment the temporary premises that are operating out of Halifax, there is no charge. So there's no to anyone, given the temporary nature of the premises. In terms of Founders and the museum, people are asked. There is a degree of trust and honesty expected. That neither organisation wants to turn people away, and they have both found that generally visitors, particularly those visitors from outside of New Zealand, are more than happy to pay a charge to enter. I think there wouldn't be an issue with high school students having to show that they were
Local.
They were local. I think that would be taken on face value.
Great, thank you.
Just wondering how much more would it cost to ensure it was free for everybody? I know that's a bit controversial, but yeah.
So through the chair, the trust have indicated that they would be looking for $20,000 increase grant to to allow free access to everyone. The staff view is that this, what is recommended is a step in order to assess how effective and any impacts, both positively and negatively, that such a change would make for local free entry. If at the end of the 12 months, when the Trust come back with next year's draft statement of intent, they can make the case that actually it should be extended, then Council could look at that time. But rather than go the big jump, the staff recommendation is we take it in a two-step-wise process.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Just to understand this, and I might have missed something along the way, so apologies for that if I have, but just put some context around it. The gallery's always been free entry anyway. No, it hasn't. Okay, well that's answered my question.
So over a long period of time, the suitor has taken donations for entry, and over a long period of time, that's gleaned $20,000 a year. And 2 or 3 years ago, we tried free Saturdays for locals. So there has been some free entry, but I guess as a trust board, we would like to see more participation, and we would like to see a barrier-free institution like many art galleries around the world. They are free. We'd still, of course, try and glean donations, because people often, when they attend these places, will give donations, but on a voluntary basis, not on a more compulsory basis. So it is clear that we will be losing $20,000 a year based on historic income, and so it is an issue for the Trust, because of course moving into new premises and as time goes on, the grants haven't.
It'd be charging for special exhibitions.
Oh, absolutely. It was always intended in the application that there will be travelling exhibitions.
That perhaps I've snuck past the ticket booth and gone into the museum, into the gallery without paying in the past. Or
Yeah, well, a lot of people have, because we, as you know, have the CAF, and so a lot of people go to the CAF, and we've never charged people to go to the CAF. So yes, there have been some people who slip past.
Okay, I'll make a donation.
A consequential question arising out of that, before I go to the other members with the question to ask questions. Mr. Ward, you mentioned the other two organisations being, I believe, the museum and Broadgreen, was it?
Founders.
And the museum and Founders. Do they receive a specific grant from council to fund the free local entry?
I'm not sure what arrangements have been made in the past in terms of calculating the block grant for certainly for the museum. For Founders, the decision was really acknowledging that there were multiple uses that the community has for Founders, and that charging them every time they wanted to go in was not reasonable, and was a real barrier to locals using the facilities out there. But I'm not aware of a specific
of the system. It would be useful to know.
I would comment, if I may, that the museum are reviewing their arrangements also, and are having some, giving the board are giving some thought to what admission structure they may like to see in the future. But again, they haven't made any changes in their draft statement of intent for this year that's gone to the joint committee. So there's no changes on that front.
Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On a lighter note, the CAF seems to be booming.
Yes, you could say that. Seems to have been particularly popular in its temporary location. You're all going to miss it when we move back to Bridge Street, but I hope you'll follow us there.
Well, can I just say to you that just during the Christmas period, I had about 4 people with me, and I said, you better come and try this CAF, and we couldn't get in. So do you really want to shift back? No, it looks good. Yeah.
Next on the list is Mr Murray.
Are we taking questions on the wider document at this point?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. I had a similar question about is the $10,000 funding consistent with other organisations, as Councillor Barker had? And I suppose when I read about that, I sort of had an opposing view that went along my head there, was that, you know, there's $6 million gone into the SUTA this year, major development, a lot of funding, around about $500,000 a year anyway, going in to keep the thing going. I sort of thought that perhaps the free entry might be a goodwill thing to get people in this year in the context of those numbers, but that was just my initial thinking about the $10,000. Anyway, look, I've got a couple of questions on the statement of intent, if I may. Under 3.1.5,
Page number?
page number 30, it says there, one of the KPIs is develop a marketing plan which focuses on attracting visitors and developing resources of the redeveloped SUTA. And you've got there that underway is a website that's being rebuilt. And I sort of had I suppose I was thinking through the various processes and particularly around a marketing plan. And for mine, a marketing plan comes out of a strategic plan. And for me, it's important that a strategic plan is in place and then the marketing plan can be developed along that. And I just wondered, and I might be reading a little bit too far there, but if the marketing plan is a website at the moment, is there a strategic plan and does it address questions of attracting international visitors and self-sustainability financially for the organisation? Is that in place and is that being developed, or where's that at?
So there is a draft strategic plan, and the marketing plan is going to flow from that. We hope to get that finalised in the next couple of months. Obviously there's been a lot of emphasis and time spent on the redevelopment, which for a small team means we have to prioritise activities, and right now the redevelopment's the major activity, but we do want to align everything so that from 1 October we are clear about the strategic plan. We certainly know what the pillars of that are. This institution will be nationally and internationally significant, and is internationally and nationally significant, and is an important part of the tourism component for this region, and will grow a stronger part. A large part of our strategic plan is cooperation with the other art-based events that happen in the town, to make sure that we all leverage off each other to maximise making Nelson an attraction. So yes, we've put a lot of thought and effort into the strategic plan. Would have been nice to have had it published a year ago, but there's just a small team of us, and it's a matter of managing priorities at the moment.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm heartened to hear that. That's very good. I sort of saw the website and thought it was a bit more to it than a website, so that's great. On page 34, and this is in your financials to December 31, December 2015, there's a line item there under income for public fundraising, and for the 6 months to 31 December 15, you've raised 97,000-ish against the budget of 327, and you're forecasting 1.3 million. Now, given that we're probably, well, we're in April now, a long way towards the financial year end, I just had a wee flag about whether you're actually going to hit that target of 1.3, because the gap's quite large given where it is.
Yeah, the gap's quite large because accounting conventions say that until we meet the milestones for the two major granting organisations, we can't account for revenue. Their money, you will see on the balance sheet that it's sitting there. We've already got it. There is absolutely no doubt that we will exceed our $6 million local fundraising component. I think 96% of it or something's already in the bank, and the rest is coming on regular payments, which will flow through to about October. So there's absolutely no doubt that the $6 million that we pledged to raise has been and will be raised.
And finally, one more question, if I may, and this is just for my own understanding. The structure is a trust, and while it's a council-controlled organisation, the trust will have a trustee, and I haven't had an opportunity to have a look at it. But who are the beneficiaries of the trust? Is that defined in there, or is it just a charitable trust, which is the Attorney General. I'm not 100% sure.
So it's a registered and incorporated charitable trust that was settled by the council pursuant to legislation which transferred it through an act of parliament to the control of Nelson City and the public of Nelson, and I guess the beneficiaries are the people of the region. It's pretty specific in the document. So I think you'll be heartened when you do read the trust deed. It's well written, put together by the previous chief executive and legal advisors.
Thank you. My apologies for that question. I didn't get a chance to get my hands on the document. Thank you.
Could I just make a quick comment about the marketing, John? You will be heartened to know that we actually do have a marketing committee, and one of the things we're focusing on at the moment is that we are going to have this fabulous new gallery opening, and we want the world to know about it, particularly the people of Nelson and New Zealand. So there's a big plan that's being put in place now so that we can make a big hiss and a roar, if you like, and a big splash. And we also recognise that the City Council are major partners with us, and we wish to do this together. It's really important. I think that we are building these plans and that we do it alongside each other. So I can assure you that's all underway. There's a whole bunch of people who are moving towards that.
Thank you. We've had 6 questions, and they really arose out of Mr. Ward's presentation of the report. I want to give Julie, Gabriel and Ian the opportunity of anything else that they want to present before I take further questions. Anything else you want to put before the committee?
Well, because the trustees can't do it themselves, I'd like to take the opportunity to say you have in the trustees that you've appointed some incredibly hard-working people, and I'd like that to be recognised, and I can say that, but they can't. But the redevelopment has consumed an immense amount of time and energy. So if we haven't quite got our strategic plan finished, that's why. And you're looking at the one full-time staff member at the moment. So I've assumed you've all read everything, but when we made this request for the 20,000, we didn't do that lightly. It was pretty carefully considered, and we have foreshadowed it here on occasions like this. One of our mandates for the project was access, and we solved the physical access problems that we had before, but of course we don't want to have that financial problem or to access, or that barrier to access. And this is going to be, this next financial year, an extraordinary year. It's an extraordinary year in our life, and for the city, in fact, when we open this new facility. And we want that to go off with a big hiss and roar. Our best advocates are going to be our people. We get them in there, they're going to tell all their visitors that come to Nelson that they've got to come along there. And we're hoping that we can build ways that we can generate the revenue we need to operate, but we've got to get those things started. And of course we've got the successful cafe, and we hope it's going to be just as successful when we move back, and it will be because it's beautiful, our shop, but we hope to generate some, or initiate some other ways to earn some revenue. But we're a pretty lean, tight ship, actually.
Thank you, Julie. So it's open for further questions. We've got Councillor Rainey. Oh, sorry, first I've had Councillor Fulton for a second question, and then I've got Councillor McGurk and Councillor Rainey.
Yes, I had some, through the chair, I had some subsequent questions regarding the free entry versus locals, and I would, for locals versus everyone, I'd like to hear what your preference is, whether you'd prefer to be free for everyone or free just for locals. Sorry. So my question was, what is the suitor's preference, whether they have a preference for it to be free for everyone or whether it's free just for locals? I understand you asked for free for everyone, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so our strategy was actually to make it barrier-free in every way, including financial. Of course, we will have a prominent and incredibly nice piece of art that will encourage people to put money down a slot. But we felt that by having it barrier-free, we will get a lot more participation and therefore will get an opportunity, perhaps, to find ways of gleaning revenue from the people, either through the shop or through the other activities that go on, or through generating a lot more activity for the region's economy. Of course, it's all really hard to honestly say you know what the outcomes are going to be, but if you don't try, you won't find out. And we certainly, I mean, this discussion, as Julie has said, we have foreshadowed that we would be asking for this. We don't have a money generating machine as a trust. We are, if you like, a museum institution, and like all of those institutions, your ability to raise money is not easy. But we do work hard to do that. Having said that, we have been incredibly successful, Gay and Craig and Julie particularly, in getting nearly $100,000 a year towards building the collection, so the ratepayer hasn't had to put any money into collection building, and that is building a significant national and internationally recognised collection to help to bring people here and for the people of the region to enjoy.
I've got just two more questions through the subsequent questions through the chair. So my second question is what's happening internationally. I know that galleries and museums used to charge internationally, but I think it's free, most of the galleries and museums in the UK and Australia now. Is that an international trend that...
Yes, it is, and sometimes the mode of collecting revenue is by making a suggestion of what that donation that you might make to gain entry is, and that's quite often used through New Zealand as well. So you have a suggested amount for entry, but you're not forcing people to pay admission.
And just one more question through the chair. I know that quite a lot of local people have an annual membership where they pay a membership fee to, and then they can get them for free as often as they like. Have you had any thoughts on whether your I'm sure that you have a membership because people want to be members, but have you reflected on how that might impact if it's free for people to get in?
Actually, that was a concern, but we've just had, well, nearly 2 years of free admission here, and our membership at the moment is just shy of 500 memberships, some of which are family. So actually going free here hasn't impacted on our friends' membership.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two questions. You talked about you foreshadowed the $20,000. I'm just wondering, how was that figure arrived at?
So as I explained before, we have for a long time, over many years, gleaned $20,000 of donations through compulsory charging at the door. And so it's very easy to quantify what we would lose if we stopped charging. Other than what we might get as voluntary donations, we can't easily quantify that.
Okay. So it takes me to the next question. For this free membership, is there a way, describe the mechanism you're using for review about new visitors to the gallery, to the Bishop Suter, and those visitors that perhaps wouldn't have gone there? How would they be identified? Like people who traditionally would go to the Bishop Suter and look at.
So what we do know from running free Saturdays is that participation increased hugely on Saturdays, and we do know that money is a barrier to return entries, and it's quite frustrating at times when you are charging, when the children of the schools, because we run a very active education program, want to bring mum and dad and aunt and uncle in to see something that's really inspired them, for them to then have to fork out money to get through the door. It's kind of putting barriers in the place of participation in art, which really is you know, something we all need to appreciate more and enjoy more as a community.
Yeah. So just a subsequent question. So looking forward is that we would report back, say, as some kind of quantifiers. Here's a new audience that we've reached, or a new population that we've reached, or people that have otherwise been able to be identified and quantified.
Correct. We've gathered statistics every year, and we report those to you on participation, and we'll be very disappointed if we don't see a marked increase. Because of the facility will be more accessible, and yeah, we will be investing a lot in trying to make sure that when we do reopen, as many people of this region get there and will want to take all their friends and relatives and visitors to the town back there, which really is a cornerstone of, as Julie said, our marketing philosophy.
Thank you. Next on the list is Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed there are some references in the documents to 1 October being maybe a target. And I'm interested in your comments before about some alliance with council in terms of promoting the opening, and I'm presuming that there will be some effort to coordinate that with the Arts Festival, I would hope, and potentially the possibility for national publicity regarding the opening of the Trafalgar Centre will combine at that time. So I'm interested to maybe get an update on how you're proceeding. Is it indeed going to be in this term or in the next term of council? And yeah, just like to get your feedback on that.
Okay, so no accident. We originally had a target of a 1 November opening, and then the Arts Festival people said, we'd really like you open for the Arts Festival, which is, as you know, mid-October. So we're happy to be able to report that through the good work of the Governance Committee, which is 2 of us from the Trust, and Alec and Nikki sitting behind you. We've worked really hard to keep the project on track, on time, under budget, and we'll be well and truly ready to open on the 1st of October. And it will be a big event, and we'll make sure that the Arts Festival will have a presence there, and if we can coordinate with any other event at the same time, I think that would be great for the region.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I will echo Julie's comments and really thank the trustees for the work that you have done, not just this year actually, but over an extended number of years to bring this wonderful project to fruition. And I'm really excited as I've watched the development going on. It's looking fantastic. I've tried to get a sneak preview, but I've been told no, it's got to be a surprise for later in the year. So we'll see how we go on that. But look, it has been a mission, and you've really grasped that mission and managed this project incredibly well. So thank you for your commitment. It is a very generous gift of time and commitment to our community. So thank you very much. Julie, I echo that as well, because we can only undertake projects like this where we have that wonderful teamwork between governance and the management of organisations, and it has been evident watching this project move forward that you have got a great team between all of you. So thank you. I want to just also acknowledge I'm delighted to see you've got the 3-year contract signed with the Ministry of Education. That's great. It's so important that we are providing educational opportunities and engagement for our young people in art and culture. If I come to the document that we're dealing with today, and I'm looking at the recommendations, both particularly in relation to this entry fee, and I just want some feedback from you. In terms of what's in our recommendation today, tags the $10,000, and we need to, we'll have to debate that shortly as to how we address this, to free entry for locals. And I'm just wondering around this, because I'm hearing you around the barriers, and this needs to be a welcoming space and an engaging place. And I'm just imagining the discussions and conversations that might go on as somebody's having to, make their way into the gallery, and I'm trying to visualise actually from the
drawings what this looks like. Is your preference that the local element is there or not there? So do you really want to have the conversation with people to find out whether they're a local? Or would you rather that you took a bit of a gamble here on the basis that you could make up the other $10,000 from having totally free entry? I'm just, because there are some options here. You continue to charge, you have free entry for locals, or you have free entry for everybody and work on the basis that you're going to generate the revenue stream from other donations or spending within the gallery. What's your preference? And then you've probably told me free for everybody, but if council wasn't minded to do that, would you want it tagged to free entry for locals, or would you like the flexibility?
So if we're totally honest, we'd definitely like the $20,000, and we understand the need to do some reporting back on that from a public accountability point of view, so we have discussed that through with Chris. If I'm also honest, if we're going to give this thing a trial, we definitely will give a trial of free for everybody, so if we can only get 10,000 from council, so be it. And I think I will make the point is that we will still engage with everybody who comes through the door, and we will record as best we can, you know, where they're coming from, because it's important to us to know, you know, whether we are in touch with our local community and whether we are getting the reach into the international community that we'd like, and the rest of New Zealand that we'd really like. So we're not going to give up collecting the data and talking to our customers.
Thanks, Ian. So, Mr. Chair, can I just clarify? So, in that sense, if council was minded to make an additional grant, your preference is that it is not tagged to an arrangement where it can only be used for locals. Is that right? Because of the way the recommendation is written at the moment, that's how that would be the consequence, that you'd only get the $10,000 if you had a free for locals and scenario. And Mr. Ward might want to wish to comment on that, because I might not be reading it correctly, but that's the inference from the recommendation, and I had a feeling that you might prefer that it was free for everybody, and you determined, at least you made that call. I don't particularly like us giving you direction around how you run your operation from this council table.
So through the chair, it certainly wasn't intended to be limited. I think and I don't see anything within the recommendation that precludes the trust deciding to offer free entry for other visitors. All we were saying is that if we were, given the request was for $20,000 for free entry for everyone, the staff recommendation is that in line with our other organisations, that council should support free entry for locals, and that be reflected with an additional grant. If what I'm hearing from the trustees is that if their intention and desire would be to offer free entry for everyone, in which case I don't see the need for a condition on the 10,000. The 10,000 would just be an additional grant.
Thank you, Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions, if I may. The bit of clarification, page 35, around the Ministry of Culture and Heritage, a current liability of $2.4 million that has appeared this year. Just some clarification around that, please.
So I did explain that, but maybe not as explicitly as I should have. Accounting convention says we can't account for that revenue until we've met the hurdles that are in our agreement with the Ministry of Culture and Heritage. So they gave us the money up front to make sure that we could earn interest on it as part of the redevelopment project very generously, and in trust that we would deliver the project, but we can't bring to account the income until we meet certain milestones. So as we meet those milestones, we can transfer that across to the income account.
Thank you, and I just
the money's there, the cash is there.
I just wanted confirmation that was the other side of the entry. That was
that is the other side of the entry. So the money's in the bank, but it's a liability.
But it's a liability until such time as you can recognise it. Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Second question relating to the cafe. My understanding of cafes is that a huge amount of their success relates to the location. I think we've been particularly lucky with the location here, in the sense that it has effectively provided a service for this end of town, but also for the library. And our library is currently unusual by library standards in not having a cafe associated with it, and I think the Suter Cafe has become that over the last couple of years, and very welcome too. I can vouch for that on a personal basis. I just wondered if any thought had been given to running a downtown branch of the cafe, because I suspect a number of the people who currently use it won't necessarily transfer up there for a casual cup of coffee.
So just to clarify the cafe, so the cafe has been a feature of the Suter for a very long time, and has been very successful for a very long time, probably because half of the clientele spend a lot of time in a building next door, which everyone will be familiar with. So we have a guaranteed level of clientele who are busting to get us back there. And we think that with the new facility and the way it's been set up to integrate with the gardens, actually it will be even more successful there. And we're really not in the business of being a landlord. At the moment, the cafe is arm's length run by a lessee, according to a set of agreed guidelines and ways that we'll operate together. So we actually don't operate the cafe. That's a private business that operates under a standard lease agreement, alongside which there's a set of things that we both will do for each other and with each other along the way. And we think that's a recipe for success, but I'm not sure we should be in the business of really operating cafes elsewhere around town.
Thank you. I believe we have exhausted the questions on my list. So we now are in a position where we need to move, someone needs to move that this report be received, and that, as required under the Local Government Act, we note the delivery of the Bishop's Suter Statement of Intent. The first two items on the recommendation has been moved by Councillor Ackland and seconded by Councillor Rainey. Is there any discussion? There being none, I'll put it. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Now we move to the recommendation to Council.
Can I just call for a brief adjournment? I just wanted to discuss something with one of
Who do you want to discuss it with?
With one of my councillors. Well, actually with the Mayor. I just wanted to ask her opinion about something.
No, I'm sorry, we can't do that.
We're allowed to
You can
call for a brief
do
adjournment.
it to the meeting, whatever you want to know at the meeting.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking for someone to move something. What are you moving? All of the second part, as recommended by staff. Do we have a seconder by Councillor Davey?
I'd like to move an amendment.
All right.
I'd like
What is your amendment?
that the second bullet point be, and that a one-off grant of 15,000 be allocated to the Suter to allow free entry without the bit for locals.
So as recommended, but with the figure being changed to 15,000,
yeah.
and the words locals been taken out.
Yeah, and my rationale for that is that the Suter's asked for 20, and I believe that they should be able to achieve a standard of at least 5,000 in donations, and that after a year it would be great to find out how much they've received in donations, and maybe that figure can be adjusted. But I'd like, as it's the opening year, to set them up for success and support them in trying to remove that financial barrier for everyone.
Understood. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? We have a seconder in Councillor Rainey. So the amendment is open for discussion. Anyone wish to speak to the amendment? Madam Mayor.
Yes, I will, and I'm speaking in support, but I'd have to say I would have preferred in this instance that the Suter has spent some time looking at I mean, they've got the numbers, they've got the stats, they're telling us 20,000. My preference actually would have been that we'd looked at 20,000 here, and given that this is a venue that is opening, it is a critical part of our cultural infrastructure, and I actually think that the evidence tells us that having free entry to our cultural institutions encourages the community to engage, and that is really important. We're not building an art gallery for it to be vacant.
sit there without people in it. It's all about people. And if this is a barrier, which we know, the statistics tell us, the evidence tells us that in New Zealand that is a barrier, then I would like to remove that barrier. Now, I recognise that that means a different financial proposition to what we've had previously. And we could say, look, I will expect, you might be able to generate that other income, and that's possible. But actually, at this point, I'd rather give some certainty and just take away that barrier, both for the people of Nelson and also for the trust at the moment, so that they can focus on generating and putting the energy into marketing this endeavour, rather than trying to deal with a system that, systems through the door, when they're telling us that best practice says don't charge for the general admission to our art galleries and cultural institutions. So I'll support this, but what I have flagged to you is I have a willingness, and I'm not sure what the willingness of the meeting is, to consider 20,000.
For a brief adjournment, because I did want to try and get a feel for what figure to put in my amendment.
Just would need to be clear that the amendment would read, as indicated, and that a one-off grant of 20,000 be allocated to the suitor to allow free entry for the 2016-17 year. That's what you're suggesting?
Yep.
Yes, I'd support that.
Right, so the amendment is now quite clear. It's those movers and seconders have amended the amendment. It's quite clearly now in the minds of everyone, I hope. We now have Councillor Ackland followed by Councillor Noonan.
I'm actually going to speak against the amendment, and that's because, and that's not to suggest by any stretch that I don't oppose the intent or indeed don't support hugely the suitor, but I'm speaking against it because I am in favour of the original recommendation of staff, and having heard from the trustees also that it's going to be funded out of their own governance of the gallery, they're going to fund free entry irrespective of the 10,000 grant. I would think in that circumstance, as a test period, we need to allow that position to proceed and then have a report back in a year's time, or in fact 6 months, on how that's going, or a year after it's open, and judge its success. Now, if it isn't successful, then I am fully in support of increasing that grant. But if it is successful, particularly with huge visitor numbers as anticipated when the gallery first opens, then I'd imagine donations will also be equal to that, or at least increase, and it'll be a match. I also note, and I appreciate that in terms of the exhibitions cost, the general funds and the financials appear to me to be currently in surplus, and I appreciate that's because in past years their expenses have been more than they are currently, but there is still some fat for trimming, as it were, in those numbers. And in a year's time, when we judge it again, this council can amend it and make a grant in addition, and I would fully support public entry, but at this stage, given the advice from the staff and given the acknowledgements from the trust itself, I think council should stick to the recommendation of 10,000 to be consistent across community facilities.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Just before we move on to the next speaker, the third part of this amendment will need to be amended very slightly to make it make sense. We've got to take the words "for locals" off the end of the third one. So I ask the mover of the amendment and second amendment, you're comfortable with that? It's clearly understood for clarity. Right, we now have Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's one of those moments when you change your mind at the table, isn't it? You have sort of a view when you come in, but you've got to be open-minded, and I'm quite happy to support this extra funding for this 1 year, and for this 1 year to be reported back for the 17-18 year, because I think that in a reopening there is extra funding that is always needed in when you change something, there is always extra funding, and I'd like to know that that is there to give comfort to the organisers and to the trustees to get a very successful year. I would like to see people from everywhere to have that first year open to them, to get them back to that area. From what I can see, the building at the moment looks magnificent. I'm very proud to have popped my 92-year-old father and his wife of 88 in the car recently. They can't walk, so I drove up and stopped and let them have a look because they can't get out. And the visual from Bridge Street is looking fantastic. I was very proud to be able to take them to that spot and let them have a view. They've been locals for a long time, so they were very proud to see it as well, and I'm very proud to see what can be done on that site. It was a big, brave move for us to go and do this build, and I think this extra funding will assist just to get that first year to be really successful, but there is a tag on it, and they do have to report back, and I do think there should be a donation box because, and perhaps with a suggested amount, because you may be very surprised how much people actually pop into those boxes, and I think that that first year will be a really good test for us.
Thank you. Councillor Rainey.
Just by way of comment more than anything, I mean, I think it's really important that this committee sets a clear, or sends a clear message, not only to this trust, but also to the governing bodies of various sports and recreation entities, that we are very interested in knowing what the kind of results are in this particular area. I mean, I think it's important that we know what the percentages are for locals and visitors, and also would think we need to get a clear indication of what the donation levels are. And indeed, comparisons between the museum and founders and the Suter Art Gallery over a period of time would be a really good thing for us to do. And I know that that is our intention, but it's not something that's always clear, or we don't always sit down and compare these sort of figures side by side. Indeed, the whole issue of recovery from our range of recreational facilities is something that Council is very mindful of, and I know that it's different for different things. However, I think we need to get an overall picture and be very clear about what our expectations are. So I'm happy that there is a clear indication in the third part of the recommendation that we do want to get some feedback on this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what those results will be in a year.
Thank you. No further speakers? I will put the amendment. We're all clear on the amendment. It's the full 20,000. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? No. I will require a show of hands. All those in favour, please raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Agreed. Against? 2. I declare it carried. It becomes a substantive motion. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? No. Carried. Item number 10 is the half-year reports from Nelson Regional Economic Development Agency and Tourism Nelson Tasman Limited. This is on pages 72 to 110. And to join us today to the table, the Chief Executive, Mr. Bill Findlater, and the Chair, Mr. Robin Whaley, and of course, Chris Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is to receive the half-yearly reports from both the EDA and from Nelson Tasman Tourism. Probably easier if we split the two for the sake of questions. You'll note that there is no draft statement of intent from either of these organisations. That is, of course, because we have a new CCO that is in the process of being established, and we will be getting a draft statement of intent from that organisation once they have the board and staff in place. So this really is just to receive the half-yearly report to December 31 from the two existing agencies. So I'm sure they'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I'll give you the opportunity now to speak to the material that's been put in front of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess everybody's had the report and my chairman's report. There are just 4 bullet points there that I've reported on. I have to say that the new transitional group of directors are working extremely hard at the moment, and it's working very well. And the old Board of Trustees support that. We're working hard on the Nelson Regional Identity Project. Bill has done a lot of complex work with the People's Republic of China, and we've just held our second Maori Economic Summit. And lastly, I'd like to thank the work of Paul Dalzell for the last 11 years' work that he's done. It's been a splendid effort. Questions?
Thank you. Is that microphone on?
Yeah, it is on. Just to follow on from Robin, and this is the last time I'll be speaking to you people in this role, so I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you for allowing me to carry this role over the last 12 years. I'm very proud of what we've achieved over the last 12 years, and it's been an interesting role after the apple industry. But I've been asked a few times on what are the tangible benefits that the EDA has brought to the region. We've brought several $1 million to this region. A lot of it seems to go unsung. We don't get up and blow a trumpet, but we have made quite a difference to this region. If I can give you an example of one where we assisted the Cawthron with getting funding for their operation out at the Glen. We managed to help them get $1.6 million. They then put $5 million of their own into that. They attracted another $15 million from a fishing company, and from that they were successful in getting a $26 million grant for oyster breeding. The CEO of the Cawthron thinks that park will eventually deliver about $80 million a year return to the region. But the subject that was always dear to Councillor Barker was how many jobs does it produce. That particular project will produce about 35 additional jobs, better paying jobs. So that's a plus in itself. In terms of what else have we achieved? We've just renegotiated another regional business partnership contract with MB, with NZTE and Callaghan Innovation. The previous contract we had over 5 years probably returned about $5 million to this region. This one we expect over the next five years to return something like $8.5 million to the region. We're the 4th region in the country to have a partnership agreement with Immigration New Zealand, where we're working to attract migrant investors to the region. We've been working with a group, and we help facilitate and set up a group called Education Nelson Marlborough. That has a partnership with Education New Zealand, and that's about attracting international students to the region. So, and that business at the moment is probably worth about $26 million. Other work that I've been doing is we've been doing a lot of work around China, and I've made the statement on a number of occasions that China is about relationships and you have to work away at it, and I'd always had the view that it would probably take 5 to 10 years before we started to see a benefit. Those benefits are starting to come through now, which has surprised me. I've been told that we now have Nelson product being sold in Guangzhou. I've recently had a group of business people here from Yangzheng, an advance party to the party that's coming, that keeps coming and keeps coming. But they've already indicated that they are going to lease premises here, and they're already in the process of sourcing product. So that's, again, one of the benefits of having sister city relationships. And one of the principals is already taking his daughter out of college in the USA
say and getting her enrolled at Nelson Girls. So there's tangible things. Just a couple of other little things that I thought I might enlighten you with that you don't know, or other people seem to take credit for. But Rugby World Cup that returned $10 million to this region. That was actually an initiative that started with myself, Paul Davis from Latitude Nelson at the time, and Susan Coleman from Nelson City Council, and we sat down and said, let's see what we can do, and eventually that came. So that was something that I was really proud of. And the Cycle Trails Trust, the Cycle Trails that has got quite a lot of funding around Nelson, was actually an initiative between a group of cycling enthusiasts who came along to talk to me. We then got Paul Davis involved in the process as well, and we set up the Nelson Cycling Trust. And again, those are things that are bringing benefit and cash benefit to our region. So that's some of the things that we've done over the years. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. It was good to get that summary of the achievements. There's questions from Deputy Mayor.
Well, it's not really a question, and I no doubt the Mayor will want to follow me, but you were the original man that took up the EDA when it started, what, 11, 12 years ago, and you've been with it ever since. And I've watched what you've done, Bill, in your own way, built all sorts of organisations around this region with your talents and your skills. And I was around when we set it up. I must admit I'm very proud of what you've done, and I know that the Mayor will probably want to add to this, to thank you very, very much, and wish you well for what you plan to do in the future. So that's what I wish to acknowledge, Mr. Chair.
Very well said, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm sure the committee agrees entirely with those comments. Other speakers, questions? Madam Mayor.
Thank you both very much for the half-yearly report. It evidences the breadth and depth of the work that the EDA has undertaken over an extended period of time, as the Deputy Mayor acknowledged. Robin, thank you very much for your leadership over this period as Chair, and with the work that you've put into the establishment process of bringing the two organisations together. I thank you very much for I know it's been a considerable amount of work, and I really appreciate the way that you have managed the governance processes through that and the thinking that's gone behind it. Bill, I will acknowledge you today, but only in the sense of actually there's quite a lot of work still to be done. So over the next little while, the work of the EDA, it doesn't stop, it's continuous, and it is an organisation that has had to be able to respond to initiatives as they've come through, to be fleet of foot and be able to, as we've talked about with the engagement with China, it is the visitors that are in business visitors that are coming to Nelson now are fairly consistent in the sense of the numbers that are coming through. They are growing, and yes, they often arrive with very little notice, but they are extremely well looked after by the Economic Development Agency in connecting opportunities in our region. So I appreciate particularly that contribution that will continue over the next period. This is you're absolutely right when both of you talk about the achievements of the Economic Development Agency and the fact that they are long-term. So one of the things that I have focused on in my role as Mayor is that some things are immediate. You can, in terms of the opportunities through the securing the central government grant money and managing things through that process, you've had to deal with, as you said, major events in the city and been a key part of those over many of the events. Most recently the Rural Tour, where both Nelson Tasman Tourism will present shortly, and the EDA were integral in making that event successful. So I really want to congratulate you on this half-yearly report and acknowledge the contribution that has gone on over a significant period of time. We'll probably address that again on another day, but in terms of the report and what is there, I certainly feel quite satisfied with the investment that this council has made in economic development and the delivery you've made. So I just wish to acknowledge that today and thank you both very sincerely for your commitment to our region.
Mr. Murray.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll reiterate those words as well. I've only been on the committee for a short period of time, but had a long association bill with you through commercial matters, so appreciate that and thank you very much. It's been an interesting journey. And I remember working on that Rugby World Cup committee and facing some of the challenges of getting that across the line. So yeah, some great achievements. Just a couple of technical questions very quickly, if I may. On page 89, we've got transactions with related parties. You've got there that the EDA received the following income from the Nelson City Council, and you've got their project grants, 9,150, 1715. Did you actually receive those? Because I can't see them appearing anywhere in your income and expenditure statement. Or are they sort of funds still here at council which you can access if need be? No, the 219's in the operating grant. Okay, so where have we accounted for them? Sorry to do that to you, Bill.
I'll ask my learned advisor.
I can see the income Nelson City Council 219, which is the top line operating grant, and then we've got some contract management fees, some small amounts coming in as income.
The operating grant is what we've received from council. It's in the 219149 in the top
Yes.
of the page 13. So that's the same. These others, we're trustees for those. We're a conduit for those coming in out and through, aren't they? Yes. So we don't not our funds.
So they're not
We're
your
a conduit for those.
right. So you haven't actually physically received the cash.
We receive them and pass it on. We supervise that. We're
Right.
a trustee for that.
Okay.
So the top line is in the top line of our figure.
Yeah. Okay.
All the rest we're agents for and
Okay.
trustees for that. We're supervisors.
Yes. Okay. So you didn't actually receive them then in the
We
EDA.
received them and then we handed them on.
Okay.
But they're not our money.
Okay. Yes. All right. And a question, Mr. Ward, if I may. At the 31st of December 15, we've got some 520 odd thousand cash in the bank, which is a fantastic amount to be sitting there. What happens to that when we merge or amalgamate or whatever we're doing coming through, and at what time frame will that happen?
So through the chair, we're just taking some legal advice on that matter. If we turn to Nelson Tasman Tourism, which is a limited company, it's clear that any retained earnings would return to the shareholder, and the shareholder could then distribute to the new NRDA. We're just taking some legal advice, and just because the EDA had been set up as a charitable trust initially, and so we just need to make sure that the requirements of the EDA's own constitution and the Charities Act 1957 are met. I'll report back to the committee in future on that.
Thank you very much. No further comments, questions. I'll call for someone to move a motion. Being moved by Councillor Davey as per the recommendation. The motion is as per recommendation. Do we have a seconder? The seconder is the Deputy Mayor. The motion is as the three parts to it at the moment. And you want to do the first two parts? Okay. Right. Logically correct. The motion is quite clear. It's been moved and seconded. The first two parts of the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Now we'll call upon our other visitors. Linda Keane and Sharon Maguire. Linda, the Chief Executive, and Sharon, the Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just through the Chair, just want to certainly acknowledge our colleagues from the Economic Development Agency. It's been an absolute pleasure behind the scenes. A lot is done between the EDA and Nelson Tasman Tourism and often goes unseen. Bill has been a great leader for this community of business and the social wider community, and also the Chair, as we've mentioned, Paul Dalzell past, but also Robin Wally coming in and the fellow directors. So we're tabling for you here today the 6-month report to the shareholder based up to July to 31 December 2015, and in that period of time we saw 3 of our directors depart, Phil Taylor as Chair, Larry Lumsden and Terry of course, and they left us at the AGM. I subsequently took up the Chair role in November and have been a director for just on 6 years. You have in front of you the report, and we take that as read and ask if you have any comment or questions to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Ward or of our visitors? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I go to page 99, with regard to the income result for the eyesight? If I said, as part of a question, that one of the reasons why brochure sales, etc., are down, would that be because there's more online?
Correct.
If second part of that, then what do we do about it?
Okay, so I'm going to let Linda talk to you because we've obviously got quite a big social media strategy around that, so just one moment.
Yeah, even though we have seen a decline in brochure display advertising, there is definitely still a need for brochures. To help pick up that slack with our new responsive website, we have an easier channel for people to go from the website to make bookings. We've improved the IBIS reservation system so that we can now sell accommodation throughout the country rather than just more regional, and also through our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram digital platform that we are doing a lot more promotion to push people into the eyesight. At the moment, the foot traffic for the year has been fairly steady against last year. We feel there's definitely been a lot more people around. People are coming into the eyesight, they're picking up the brochures, so there's definitely still that hard copy need, and then they might be going out to the car or shopping and then booking online from their mobile devices. This is a national trend, but we certainly hope with the upgauging that we're doing in our digital platforms that any decline in brochure display advertising will be offset in booking sales, and we're currently ahead 10k with booking sales.
Any further questions? Taylor, did you want to? Oh, right, thank you. Okay, I will ask for someone to... Councillor Rainey.
I'm just, thank you, through the Chair. I'm particularly interested in the potential for the increased growth through Nelson Airport. And want to know not only the growth that we've seen recently, and I know you've clearly articulated this on page 8 and 9 of your report, page 99 of our agenda, but taking into account that we've seen some dramatic growth over the last, I don't know, year or whatever, and that there's proposed further growth potentially, does that give a renewed possibility for concentrating on the domestic market? And if so, would there be any particular part of the market that you'd really want to concentrate on? Where does the capacity lie? What are the percentages of people coming through on the capacity that we currently have, and where do we see the potential there? I'd just be interested in your thoughts on that.
Did you want to answer that? Yeah. I'll kick it off. So obviously with things like Light Nelson, that gives us a complete opportunity with Inter-Islander and Air New Zealand to enhance further what activity's been already in place. But certainly with the choice of airlines and the likes of Jetstar coming in, that opens up the Auckland and Wellington markets, and Wellington particularly becomes more attractive. And in Jetstar's case, they have a Melbourne, Wellington, Nelson connection through, so we're about to do some support activity. So, and to answer your question, the domestic market absolutely is critical, and I think we're all seeing, as Tahuna mentioned first thing this morning, that subsequent to Christchurch and rebuild, and there's a bit more comfort level in Christchurch about future and settlement of employment and growth in Christchurch, we're certainly seeing that domestic market rise back. So Wellington definitely, and you know, we should never discount Auckland, just sheer population growth and direct flights. I mean, 282 flights direct into this region every week is a pretty compelling argument for why you'd want to come and visit Nelson.
Thank you. No further questions? Comments? Madam Mayor.
I'm happy to move the recommendation, Mr Chair, and in speaking to the recommendation receiving the half-yearly report, I'd like to acknowledge Sharon and Linda for their leadership in the tourism sector. I think we are incredibly privileged to have such professional people representing our region and promoting what is so great about the region to the rest of New Zealand and to the world. And we can see the success that has been achieved through this half-yearly report. I mean, the growth in tourism across New Zealand is strong, we know that. But what we also know is that our region is performing extremely well. And I just want to thank you both very sincerely for that leadership. Particularly, I have seen when we were looking at the airline opportunities and what we've secured, we often focus on the role of the airport, and they have certainly played an enormous role in that, but I would say that they've done that hand in glove with Nelson Tasman Tourism, who have activated the interest from the business community, the hospitality community, the retail community in our region, so that people understood the value of that proposition. And certainly when it comes to telling the story about our region, the resources and the identity created through Nelson Tasman Tourism has benefits not just for the tourism sector, but it has for growing our region to encourage people to both to come and live here and bring their businesses here. So I really just want to acknowledge that today. For both of you, you're going through a period of change, and I want to thank you both for the positive, really positive attitude that you've taken to that, the leadership you've shown, and your commitment through the establishment board process. I again, as I said to Robin and Bill, we've been asking a lot of you. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of commitment, and it is genuine service back to your community, and it is appreciated, so thank you.
Well said, Your Worship. Mr Peters.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Thank you for the report. I enjoyed reading it. It was interesting to see us leading the pack in so many areas, and very gratifying. Can I just ask how this information is shared with Tasman District Council? Do you go and present to a similar committee or their board, or their council, on this same 6 monthly result?
In the past, yes, certainly we have, through the draft annual plan process and through various other requests for meetings and information's update since September last year, with the transfer of the shares into Nelson City Council. We haven't been invited back yet to provide an update. I believe we haven't sent the 6-month report, but we did on the annual report.
So can I just go one step further? We do invite all councillors to forums. So we had an industry forum just held on the 12th of April, and everybody's invited to that. So there is always that opportunity to engage with the industry, but also as a significant stakeholder, the proactiveness requirement is in that stakeholders' hands, I guess, to take up that challenge. But clearly we have that information available. It's up on our website, all those sorts of things. So we would trust that Tasman would see that as a proactive thing to do.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and been seconded by Councillor Ackland. Is there any discussion of the motion? The motion is that the third part, the half-yearly report of tourism, Nelson Tasman Limited, A1511411 be received. All in favour, please say aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you. At this stage, at 10:40, we're going to adjourn for morning tea. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back online, so I ask you to take your seats. And welcome to councillors who weren't here for the earlier portion of the meeting. We are now moving to item number 11, service levels, reviews, progress update, and to the table, Gabrielle Thorpe. Gabriel, your report is on pages 111, 117. It's been read by members. Now, would you like to speak to your report? Are there any corrections or alterations?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. You'll see the report for the service level review update. There are no amendments to be made or corrections to be made. Just a reminder about the context of Section 17A. It was a requirement under the Local Government Act to review cost effectiveness of our services and functions, and this had to be undertaken by August 2017. I'm open to questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Everyone quite clear? Read the report? It's been moved by Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Noonan, that the report, service level reviews, progress update, and its attachment be received. Is there any discussion? There is no discussion. I'll put it. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Now we come to item 12, which is on pages 118 to 157. And welcome to the table, Mr. Roger Ball. Thank you for a very detailed and very comprehensive and very impressive report. Would you like to speak to it? Are there any alterations and corrections to mention first?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. No corrections or alterations to mention, and thank you for your kind words. I need to acknowledge the author of the report, which was my predecessor, Aaron Neighbours, and I'm merely here to shepherd it through. The draft plan in front of us today follows on from the charter, which was agreed by Council last December. This puts in place now a 5-year plan to assist Council to meet its obligations under the legislation passed through this month. I'm ready for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Roger, for Mr. Ball, for the report. The question I have is that the report tends to be sort of focuses on the officers within the organisation, and I'm just wondering about the role of this table in terms of councillors as directors under the Act. The document here seems to be rather silent on the role that, or the expectations of this council table and members of this council in terms of the director role, in terms of, say, visible leadership. So I'm just...
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor, for the question. Yes, indeed, this strategic plan does focus on the expectations of the enterprise, if you like, at the business level. The expectations for this table are set out in the charter that was agreed in December. Possibly we could look to cross-reference that into here in a little bit more detail. In the charter, for example, we set out some expectations for councillors in line with the Institute of Directors guidelines around annual review of the documentation, such as this plan and such as the charter, but also operational visits to sites on a quarterly basis, and also a quarterly review of the performance data. So there are certainly expectations, and they are set out in the legislation, but they're in the charter that was agreed last December.
Yes, just a follow-up question on that. So is it logical, therefore, that we amend this document to incorporate those things that you're talking about?
I think, through you, Mr. Chair, if that would add clarity, I'd be quite happy to do that, and it seemed quite sensible.
Mr. Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That addresses one of my concerns, and I do believe it is important before this committee accepts or receives the document that it be with those amendments, showing that it does encompass the whole. Just another, and particularly things like the planned visits, which was another question that I had, which isn't covered, planned visits by this group, the members of this group. A couple of other questions, if I may. Roger, the intended audience of this document, how widely disseminated do you anticipate the strategic plan being amongst internally within the organisation? And the reason for asking that question, so that it's not set up in any way, is that it's a comprehensive document, a 37-page document. In my view, there will be busy people in the front line of the organisation who probably won't read it in its entirety in this form. So a corollary to that question is whether there is any intention to do a brief schematic type thing that will impart the same kind of questions, same kind of information and obligations to a group who may not have the time to sit down and read 37 pages.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, indeed, this document is aimed at very much at the leadership of the organisation and setting out the broad, high-level 5-year plan. Sitting below that are a number of other documents which seek to put into practice at the coalface the expectations for staff and for team leaders and managers about what they need to do in order to put that into practice. Those documents are the health and safety management system standards, but also our operational risk registers and our management plans at the team level. So those documents are either done or in production and form part of the support for this plan.
Thank you. May I ask a further question, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Roger, for that. One of the key things, obviously, in terms of embedding something like this, and you would know this far better than I, is the training, the orientation that goes on. I note the 2 timeframes contained in there is at a senior level within 60 days and other areas within 30 days. How is it recognised that there will be appointments which will require training prior to taking up the role, prior to actively taking up the role? I'm sure there will be some positions, if it's anything like I anticipate, that people will need to go through health and safety training as part of their orientation, and because they could be exposed or expose other people within the first 30 days of their activity. Is that catered for?
So there aren't too many examples like that, but where necessary, staff, if they do require specialist induction or training, may commence in a more limited role until they've been signed off by their team leaders or managers. Generally speaking, most staff and most of the management will proceed through an induction program and be signed off in progression according to the needs of their roles. But if necessary, if it's necessary to hold somebody back from undertaking a duty until they're adequately trained, that is certainly the expectation of management that will occur, and in fact always has been. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I had a question, Roger, on page 114 of our agenda under the health and safety events performance. On the second paragraph there it says a modest 2-to-1 hazard to incident ratio has been set. What do you think, the bottom line there talks about an accurate ratio and reporting rate, what do you think is the accurate one if this is modest?
Mr. Chair, could you just help me with the page numbers there? Your agenda's a little different.
It's page 24.
Thank you.
Of the document, and it's page 144 of our agenda. Just trying to determine how accurate we are at looking at hazards, and are we overstating hazards or understating hazards potentially?
At this stage of the maturity, Mr. Chair, of the organisation in terms of health and safety culture, we're aiming for a ratio that we believe is appropriate to an organisation which is local government, which has a very high proportion of its staff inside the office environment. Where that might land later on with an organisation that is matured in terms of its health and safety culture, I wouldn't like to say just yet. We are still with some of these metrics, and you might have seen in the 5-year plan some of the goals that we're aiming at. We are still trying to find the right place to land for a local government unitary authority with most of its people in an office environment, but with still some high-risk activities underway. So to answer your question, that's an estimate for us at this stage.
Yeah, and just to be clear on the estimate, it's 2 to 1. Is you're identifying hazards and you're expecting that there'll be an incident for half of those hazards.
Correct.
In a year.
On an average basis. Yes.
Right. Thank you. Is there any further questions? Would someone address the question of a recommendation? Oh, sorry, Mr. McGurk. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if we could alter the recommendation to include the amendment to the recommendation. I'm happy to move the recommendation with the amendment that we include the expectations of councillors as outlined in the Charter and best practice from the Institute of Directors. I think that was the advice you gave, Mr. Ball, wasn't it?
No, I'm happy to accept that as the motion. You're going to move that.
Oh, I'll move that motion with that amendment.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Mr. Peters. And in accepting your seconding of it, I'm cognizant of the role that the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee has played in getting council to this position, where we're in a enviable position, I believe, in relation to many other organisations. So it's been moved and seconded, the first part. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no, carried. Now we have a recommendation to council. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor McGurk, seconded by Mr. Peters.
Have you got the amendment? That's the amendment. Would be the recommendation.
Yes, that the draft strategic plan, which of course we've amended in the previous motion, goes to council. Been moved and seconded. No comment, no discussion. I'll put it all in favour. Please say aye. Against, no, carried. Thank you. That deals with item 12. We move now to item 13, which is entitled Responses to Mr. Neal's Public Forum on the 3rd of March. It's on pages 158 to 214. Nikki, would you like, in the absence of the Chief Executive, to
Yes,
this report, please?
Through the Chair, the Chief Executive is not here, but as you'll see from the report, the matter was investigated, which it needed to be, seeing it was raised, but it was found that there was absolutely no substance that had been looked at in the past, and there was no new material. So, thank you.
Right, that is the report that's been circulated. Are there any questions? Mr. Murray.
Perhaps a comment rather than a question, and a little bit of, I suppose, personal take. When I read this item in the agenda, I was shocked, I suppose, at the depth of the paper in terms of the persistentness around the issue and how far it's gone, and exactly who's looked at it, and well, what I'd call playing the man, not the ball, in here with some people that are named, and I'm shocked at that, to be fair. And I don't think that in any sort of circumstance, if you're playing an issue, you play an issue. You don't play the people around that unless it's necessary. So I was concerned about that. I questioned hypothetically in my head where the line is between being vexatious is, and I'll throw that in here. I don't know, but there is a lot here, and I just wonder at what point in time things become deemed to be vexatious. And I'm not suggesting this is or it isn't. I'm just saying it is a question that sort of has occupied my mind over the last couple of days. And finally, I think just to complete the loop, we're only receiving this report, which I think is appropriate. But I just, again, I think clause 5.8 in the report is very, very pertinent for us. for everybody here that says for clarity documents, and this is the advice of the Chief Executive, for clarity documents and other material received by councillors in their capacity as a member of the council are discoverable under the Local Government Act. And that implies that if we receive information on behalf of our roles here, then it is council information. So yeah, I just wanted to make those comments because I think that the matter's now concluded, but personally I had those feelings going on about the depth of this report and how long it's been going on for.
Yeah, and to be clear, anything you're talking of vexatious nature is to do with the material that involves the person who attended the public forum, Mr. Neil. Quite clear on that? Yep. Any further comments? Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm only going to speak briefly on this. And I appreciate Mr. Murray's commentary and essentially the questions being asked about the issue of communications and at what point an organisation says this is now becoming vexatious or this has become vexatious. I do think that is a question that we should think about. The other element I'd say is that there are documents in here that I have never seen before, and I would have to say it is a quite vulnerable position to be sitting having accusations made about you when you haven't got the documents. So I'm pleased that the documents have been provided to the Chief Executive so that she could have a look at them. It's important that there is transparency and accountability in terms of our processes, absolutely critical. So I'm pleased that she's had a look at those and established that there are no issues at all. So I thank you for having undertaken a review.
Thank you, Your Worship. Deputy Chair Ackland.
Yes, this was a peculiar situation, wasn't it, where Mr. Neil came to a public forum of council and made some pretty outrageous sort of allegations. He told this committee at the time, this was the last committee meeting of this committee, that he had these concerns about the mayor and a contractor, and that he'd given me information about that. So, which was correct, he'd given me information in December, and it was the information that's now attached to Appendix 3. And you see, in my view, when I received that information, of course, my viewpoint was pretty clear that he was wanting me to become his champion and to sort of run a collusion, sort of an argument that the mayor had been colluding with a contractor. And I made it pretty clear, I thought, in the meeting last time we were here, that I didn't share his view on that. And particularly didn't share his view on that because the Office of the Auditor General had already looked at it, the Minister of Local Government had already looked at it, and indeed the mayor herself had been sent the information which I was given copies of.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, that's an incorrect statement. I have not been privy to the information in full that is attached in this document.
Oh, sorry. The information I got was copies of correspondence between the mayor and Mr. Neil. So the information I got was simply copies of the information that had already been circulated back in July, September and August. I think in October as well, when the Office of the Auditor General contacted the mayor about Mr. Neil contacting the Office of the Auditor General. And so my intention always is potentially, I mean, as well as being vexatious, potentially it was defamatory as well, what he was saying. And there's no real benefit at all in publishing potentially defamatory comments. And obviously my decision in that respect was to protect this institution, not to circulate further damaging remarks about the mayor and damaging remarks about others. Appreciate the point about the OIA. That's obviously important in terms of transparency, and that comes when someone makes a request, and information is always available when a request is made. So it's good that this has been resolved. It does seem extraordinary that the council's gone to this level of a sort of investigation over this, because clearly on its face, as my first instinct was, clearly this was just a man on a personal mission, and certainly a mission that I wasn't willing to take up, and I wouldn't expect anyone else around this table would take up either.
Thank you for that. I think we all have many things we can always learn. Any other comments? Then the recommendations have been moved, and it's noting that in particular that the allegation of collusion has been considered and found to have no basis. Council accepts this this finding. Moved, Councillor Davey.
Yeah,
Seconded. You wish to speak to your...
Just wish to comment that it's very disappointing that it's come down to such a high volume of work when all the official lines of inquiry have been followed and none were accepted. It's extraordinary that a very good person like Mr. Neil has made the comments that he did at that last council meeting. I'm happy with this recommendation.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Fulton. Finally, I'll just speak and say that to me it's very important that we be as totally transparent in everything that we do, in everything that we receive, as far as is legally possible. So I'll leave it at that. I'll ask for those who are in favour to say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 14, report from the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee. Mr. Peters. We'll do item 14 first, then we'll do the late item.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Relating to the meeting of the 31st of March 2016, firstly I propose that the minutes of that meeting held on the 31st of March be received.
Seconded. Mr. Murray is seconded. Moved and seconded. No comment. Yes, there is. Councillor McGurk. Question? Oh, okay. It's been moved and seconded already. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. So now we'll do the late item, which we approved to do.
There was a couple of more.
Oh, sorry.
Should I finish off that?
Yeah, finish it off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the course of that meeting, the first corporate report in the new format was received and discussed and accepted. And then a large part of the meeting, a major part of further proposals related to the extension of a loan facility to Melrose House. And as a consequence of that discussion, it is recommended to this committee and to council that 15,000 funding allocated towards asbestos remediation of Melrose House in 2016-17 be brought forward to 15-16 and be used to grant fund the society for the purpose of toilet refurbishment, and that an additional unbudgeted grant up to 42,000 is provided for the purpose of toilet renovations in the current year, and that Melrose Society be informed that no further grants be made by council to the Melrose Society for refurbishment or chiller installation. I'm happy to propose
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Do I have a seconder? That's been seconded by Councillor Noonan. This matter was examined very carefully and received at least 2 visits from Melrose people before this was put through. So it's been moved and seconded. We have a question or a comment from Councillor Rainey.
My query, Mr. Chair, is where will this funding be coming from?
Can we ask Nikki through you to Nikki?
Is it tagged, if it's subsequent, is it tagged to any heritage fund?
I would imagine it's coming out of the council's surplus funds from savings, but we'll hear from Mr. Ward.
Mr. Chair, as the recommendation says, there's 15,000 was allocated to asbestos, potential asbestos remediation in the next financial year. The recommendation to council is that money is brought forward. As the recommendation also makes clear, the remaining funding was unbudgeted.
So that means it will come from savings and other operations. Okay, that's been answered. Any further discussion? We've got the 3 parts to this recommendation involving the Melrose Society. I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried.
Further proposal was discussed, Mr. Chairman, also recommended to Governance Committee and Council that the unspent 2015-16 community investment operational budget of 21,300 be carried forward to the 16-17 financial year, bringing that total budget in the following year to 327,000. I'm happy to move that.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Noonan. questions? Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just, maybe a point of clarity is that the unspent sums, is that money that was unallocated or was allocated but not spent and has been returned?
Through the chair, there was one grant of $15,000 that was allocated and not picked up. The remainder was unallocated from the first round of funding. It's a small amount.
Is there another round in this financial year?
Through the chair, there are two funding rounds each year. One is an expressions of interest process for the larger community investment fund grants, and the second is a smaller allocation of up to 50,000 of the total pot for smaller grants. Both those have taken place this year. We're now in the planning phase. We're in the process of the expressions of interest phase for the next financial year now.
No further discussion? There is a question from Councillor Rainey.
And apologies to Mr. Ward, I should have asked this prior to the meeting. I mean, is this a policy of that particular? Is this part of the policy of Community Investment Fund, or was this a one-off scenario?
So through the chair, there is no policy on this, hence the reason why we have come to Audit, Risk and Finance to make this allocation. The concern from the Community Investment Panel was that they felt they should allocate funding based on the merits of the proposals that were in front of them. And if it so happened that they didn't feel they wanted to allocate funding to proposals which were not as, gave less outcomes. And so the request from the panel to Audit, Risk and Finance was that the small amount of money that hadn't been allocated and the funds that had been returned be carried over so that they weren't forced to potentially over-allocate in future years. That was the concern that the community was going to lose out through the process.
I appreciate that. And further questions. So, and I should know the answer, and apologies. Was there any pro rata in the allocation that had been given to the other successful applicants? There wasn't. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against, no. Carried. Thank you. Item number 15. Mr. Murray, would you like to deal with your subcommittee's report?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, the minutes, draft minutes very much record the fact that we went straight into public excluded business and no business was transacted in the open forum.
Been moved by a member, Councillor Noonan. Seconded. All in favour, please say aye. So carried. Now we deal with the late item, which you've all got in front of you. Insurance renewal. This is Nikki Harrison's report. Would you like to come to the table, please, Nikki?
Through the chair, this is a procedural report which is around the insurance renewal for the infrastructure assets. And this is really just looking that the matter be referred to the council meeting on the 5th of May. The initial delegation was with the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee. The delegation got relinquished up to the Governance Committee. I have no further information at this point in time because the report has not been received from Tonkin and Taylor. Should be in the next few days. Thank you.
Mr. Peters, do you wish to deal with this one, please? Would you care to deal with this one as a matter it's been in front of the Risk and Finance Committee?
I'm happy to deal with it, Mr. Chairman. When it was presented to the Audit, Risk and Finance Subcommittee, further information was awaited. So it was deferred to this committee or referred to this committee. As no further information, that information still has not been received, it's appropriate that it be referred to the 5th of May meeting, given that we have a deadline by the end of May for
Yes.
the final confirmation to be provided as to whether or not we wish to participate in the LAPP program.
Thank you very much. Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just a query, and there's some information. I'm just wondering what the information, for those that weren't at the Audit, Risk and Finance subcommittee, perhaps we could find out what the extra information we've requested. Something to do with Tonkin and Taylor, but I don't know what.
Through the chair, the Tonkin and Taylor have been undertaking some earthquake and flood assessment work, specifically considering the insurance aspects of it and whether or not our insurance cover is adequate in terms of our maximum probable loss calculations, and that final report hasn't come through yet.
Right, I'll call for someone to move the recommendation as a motion. It's been moved by Mr Peters and it's been seconded by Councillor Davey. Is there any further discussion? I'll put it all in favour, please say aye. Against, no, carried. Item 16, exclusion of the public. The motion is there on the agenda. Move it to exclude the public. Moved by Councillor Ackland and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. And the motion